evening. I'll give everybody a minute to join me and get on and move my camera a little closer. There we go. Yay! That way you can see me better. We had a few questions in the group this week, and one of them that brought an interest to me was the talk about changing patterns around. I know a lot of us have some single crochet patterns. Hi, Angela. I know a lot of us have single crochet patterns or corner to corner patterns, and we'd like to change them around and make them into Tunisian patterns. So that's one of the things that I'd like to talk about this evening. Another thing that I will be talking about this evening is gauge, how gauge affects things. This has been brought up not only in this group, but I've seen it in a few other groups. There's been a lot of people asking questions or coming to me in the background with complaints about they bought a pattern and it's coming out this size. And so I think that's going to be an interesting topic for this evening too, is gauge. And hi Lorraine, hi Erica. So now that we have a few people coming in, yeah, so I do think that gauge plays a huge role in things, especially to new Graphghan makers. If you're executing a pattern, I think it makes a huge difference in your size. And I've done several polls in here over the last 2 years, and a lot of people will say, I hate to gauge things, I don't gauge things, I don't do a gauge swatch. And that's going to make a big difference in what size your pattern is, and what size it comes out, the type of stitch that you use, and the type of yarn you use, the type of hook you use. There are so many things that play a factor in what you're using. Hi, Susan. That 10-minute gauge swatch that you do is going to save you so much time. I have a woman right now that's doing a Graphghan, and she bought it, and it says it can be done in corner to corner, single crochet, TSS, half double crochet, and block stitch, and a few other stitches. And the pattern that she has is she's diligently working it away, and she is going to end up, I started working with her, it was about 8 foot, so we figured it out. Hi Lisa, hi Linda. We figured it out, and her corner to corner pattern that can be done in single crochet, TSS, block stitch, is going to be about 14 foot wide and about 22 foot tall. So I think that's hugely important. And in our files, we do have a file about the size of blankets, and it gives you an idea. Most of us, using the J Tunisian hook and number 4 worsted weight yarn, are getting 4 stitches to 1 inch, and 4 rows is just a pinch over 1 inch. But you do get a square gauge with that. Hi Carmel. Yes, my messenger's going off from the chats. I was talking about the gauge. Here's a good example. I am doing a weighted blanket for a customer, and they are 160 pounds. Yes, you can, It's the black chat that we have. They need to get out of there. So taking a pattern that's small, like for instance something that could be corner to corner, that's approximately 45 by 65. I'm working on something that's that small of a pattern now, and this is where gauge and hook size and everything comes in, that it's so important. With that, I'm using Bernat blanket yarn. I needed to figure out for this weighted blanket how much yarn I needed to get into it, because you take your grams for each skein, and each skein that I'm using is 300 grams, and my customer's 160 pounds, so my blanket needed to weigh about 15 pounds. So I needed to take the grams and keep adding the 300 skein balls up to figure out how many I needed, and then I needed to figure out the size throw that was going to be used, and mine's going to be 45 inches wide by 65 tall. And hi Carol, in doing that I am using a pattern that is 45 by 65, and that does not sound big at all, but since I'm using a bobble stitch, this is where gauge plays such a big role. Let me grab my blanket. This is the weighted blanket that I'm working on, and each one of these bobbles is, let me measure fully across, 1.5 inches. So I have 1.5 inches between each bobble. So this is why gauge and doing a gauge swatch before you start a project is such an important thing. These bobbles with the Bernat blanket yarn are 1.5 inches across. So a blanket that needs to be a certain size and a certain weight, that's why it's so important, you know, and especially because if somebody wants a certain yarn or they want something done. Now, in contrast to that, I'm doing the sunshine blanket, and that is done in the Tunisian bobble stitch, and those bobbles are about 1/2 inch wide. So get my stand and pull it closer. So the difference between these bobbles and these bobbles are significantly different. I mean, this is one bobble right here. This is one bobble right here. The difference between them two, if I can even, it's huge. And that's why gauge plays such a big role, and that's why I talk about doing gauge swatches and how important they are to a pattern. And because I do have members that go and they buy patterns and then they come to me and they say, this is coming out this size, or, you know, I am active in other groups where I will answer questions, just like I'm sure that all of you do. And if you see something and you know the answer, then you answer it. Is that the sunshine? Yes, that is the sunshine. The one with the yellow. This heart one, I don't even think I can get it into the whole thing. It's about halfway done, and it's huge. And like I said, those bobbles, I mean, this is my hand. Those bobbles are quite large. And in in comparison, you know, here's my hand and there's the sunshine baubles. There's a very much, you can really tell the difference. So that's one of the reasons that I talk about, especially for beginners. Once you have done a gauge swatch in a couple different stitches that you like, then it will be so much easier because you're going to know. And I know people don't like taking the 10 minutes to do the gauge swatch, but it saves so much time. Hi, Mary. It saves so much time when you do have that. And like I said, the contrast between just those two baubles is significantly different. And the weight of the blanket is significantly different. The hook size. The hook size that I'm using for the sunshine, I'm using a K. And the hook size that I'm using for the bobble stitch is an N. And that's what I said. You know, this blanket is going to weigh 15 pounds when it's done. It's going to be significantly heavy, but that's what the customer needs. And like I said, these, and that's another thing too. You know, while I was working on this blue, it's been discontinued. But since I did the gauge swatches and I pulled out the bobble and the thing, you know, the stitches, I know how much I'm using. So I could calculate how much I needed. So I bought as much as I needed, so I don't have to worry that I'm going to run out. So, thank you, Josie. She said it's a nice weighted blanket. So yes, this is going to weigh, you know, 15 pounds when it's done. It's going to be big. I've been working on this for a little while, especially over the winter because it's chilly. Because working under one of these in the summertime is extremely difficult. And the only way that I've found to work on them in the summertime is to actually roll them once you get them started. And either work on a table or a tray, like a breakfast tray, over your lap so that it's not sitting on top of you, because these weighted blankets can get extremely hot. And that's what I said. Gauge is so super, super important. I mean, this is the difference between, you know, this bobble stitch pattern I'm doing is like 264 stitches wide. This pattern that I'm doing is only 65 stitches wide. But it's huge because each one of these bobbles are between an inch, they're about an inch and a quarter. So this is going to be 65 inches long and 45 inches wide. And that's not with a border or anything else on it. And that's one of the things too, because weighted blankets are becoming so popular and people are talking about them. And I'm actually working with a group, and they give you a chart that, it's from another site, but they give you a chart and it gives you ideas about how much your blanket should weigh for your customer's size. And I found it extremely helpful, and people don't understand. They think, oh, well, just because I crocheted a regular bobble stitch blanket, it's a weighted blanket. You can call it a weighted blanket, but the real medical weighted blankets go by a percentage of how much you weigh, or the person that you're making the blanket weighs, for optimal, the optimal benefit of the blanket. So that was one thing we were going to talk about tonight, was the gauge and how much different things are. Now who's messaging me? Sorry guys, I'm going to have to shut this off. I'm going to get a phone. But anyway, we were talking about gauge, and that's, you know, it makes a huge difference about how much it's going to weigh, and weighing your yarn. You know, it tells you on your yarn. Skeins how much your yarn weighs. It'll tell you it's so many grams, so many ounces. Bernat is sold by grams, so I knew that 300 grams, and then I multiplied, 300 grams to get how many grams I needed for my customer's weight. And then I had to figure out what stitch was going to be the best stitch that was going to fit all of that into the size that I needed. And it just so happened that bobble stitch was the most compact to fit the size that I needed to be able to get, 15 pounds in here. It's a lot to cram into a small spot. We did have another question in the group that's been really popular this week, and it's how to read patterns and transform them into the Tunisian patterns. If you know what you're looking at, there are so many pictures on YouTube and Google that people send me Google images, and I will be posting the circles in the group again. One circle shows what a bobble stitch or a blanket that can be done in a cluster stitch, how the lines connect. And I don't think this has any in it. These are all super thick. But if you see, this would be a one stitch color change. And luckily these connect going up, but sometimes you'll have this come across, and then you'll have, let's see if I can show it diagonally. We'll say that the blue come out to here, and then it's jagged. It doesn't connect up and down. You would need it to connect here to here to here to here to here to go up the steps. Otherwise, if it just goes diagonally, in a bobble stitch like this huge bobble and this being connected diagonally really it would show the outline. Whereas if you're doing a pattern in single crochet or non-cluster stitches, as in single crochet, Tunisian simple stitch, half double crochet, that diagonal stitch looks very jagged because it's not clustered. And there is like I said, there's an example that we use in here, and it's 2 different circles, and that will tell you the difference too in how a pattern's designed. And unfortunately, not all designers know what to look for in a pattern. Just like I said, the lady that I'm working with now, she's working on a pattern that says that it's designed for corner to corner single crochet, and that's just it's not going to work because of the broken lines, which is another thing you need to look for in your patterns. As far as reading them, there are 2 different ways that designers are writing patterns now. One is the written, where it says right side and wrong side, and it has the little arrows pointing in the direction that you should be going, and it has color blocks. So for instance, it would show a blue block and it would say 9, and then it would show a gray block and say 4. Now you're going to crochet 9 blue and then 4 gray. Those are becoming very popular now. They have pros and they have cons. A lot of people like them because they're shorter to print out. They're not as many pages. But the con is they eat up a lot of colored ink. So that plays a bit in what you want. I mean, I think most of the designers that I know are giving an option to you get them either way, but they won't give you both ways. So with the color blocks, if you get them and they're designed for single crochet, then you're just going to read them as they're written. If you are transferring a single crochet pattern into a Tunisian pattern, all of your even rows, if you're right-handed, will be read backwards, because what happens is Patterns that are written for single crochet are, you have a wrong side because you're flipping your work. So then you're working on your wrong side. In Tunisian, we're not flipping. So what happens is you cast on from your dominant hand. I happen to be right-handed. So I will cast on from my right and work across and then cast off, and I will be back on the right again. So I will not be starting on what they consider the wrong side. Now, if you're left-handed, that's going to be the opposite for Tunisian graph. If you were reading the graph, you're going to read always from the left and follow the graph across and then cast off. And with the written patterns, you are going to do the right side backwards and the wrong side correctly. And that way all of your words will come out right. And a big thing about that is I noticed some designers, one of them somebody just sent me a snippet of her pattern. She is including her foundation chain as a row because a lot of people in the past have said, oh, well, if your tail is on the right, then you're working on your right side or your wrong side. If your tail is on this side, then you're doing this. That's not necessarily true. First of all, it depends on what hand you crochet with, what side your tail is going to be on. But you can't just use that. You can't look at a pattern unless you get some information and say, okay, this person's tail is on the right-hand side. So they are... sorry. I'm trying to get this off if I just... it's not cooperating with me. Yes, we're going to need to turn that off. But, again, that single crochet, or your tail, is going to greatly depend on what side, what exactly you started with. If you're right-handed and you chain, and then you start row 1, your tail is on your left-hand side. So that would be if you were right-handed, your tail was on the left. You knew you were working on your front because your tail would be on your left-hand side. Now, if you started with a foundation single crochet and you are right-handed, your tail will not be on the left side. It will be on the right side because you're working the chain and you're working your stitch in the same... you're working row 1 and you're working your foundation chain all in that simple area. So that's going to make a huge difference on, feedback to what people say. Oh, well, your tail's on your left, so you're on your whatever side. No, you need to find out if they started with a foundation single crochet. You need to find out how they started, if they started with a chain like we usually do here in Tunisian. And that all plays a big part of it too, because it is very popular, for someone to post something in another group and say, hey, I need help with this. What row am I on? Or is this the front or the back? And people are like, well, if your tail's on the left and you're right-handed, then that's your front, and that's not always true. It depends on how you start. And so, hi Robin, hi Pearl. So, yeah, that plays a big deal in it. And as far as reading goes, I think a lot of the patterns now, too, I've had a few customers say that they bought a corner-to-corner pattern, but it's not coming with the graph. It's only going to come with written. I think that's important for you to know when you purchase the graph and something that you should look for, because if you purchase a corner-to-corner pattern, it is written from corner to corner, and you are not going to be able to figure out how to change that into Tunisian very easy, because you're going to have to sit down and write all of that out or color blocks in, and there's a lot of work that's going to go into that. But if you do have the graph for the corner to corner, it has the circles with the broken lines like Erin posted, and those broken lines are going to need to be doubled. So because a corner to corner pattern is worked in a cluster stitch like this. So that big cluster fills in spots where if you're doing just the single crochet and you have just that single crochet and it's clear over here and it's just one, you're barely going to see that. So when you double it, you're working the block so that it's 2 stitches wide and 2 rows tall. So in essence, this is going to be 4 stitches. It's going to be 2 stitches wide and 2 rows tall. And when you do that, then it's going to pixelate and make that section bigger so that it pops. So when you do a corner to corner pattern and you're changing it into a Tunisian pattern, when you double that, and in my experience anyway, with using the worsted weight yarn, most people are doing the mini corner to corner and they're getting a 1/2 inch bobble or 1/2 inch corner to corner cluster for the mini corner to corner. And if you double your pattern in Tunisian to use for Tunisian, you're getting 2 stitches to a 1/2 inch and 2 rows to a 1/2 inch, so you're also going to come out with the same size. So this is another reason why we talk about gauge so much and why the difference in these patterns is so important, because there are some patterns, and I've seen quite a few that have a nice dark outline on them, and they do look nice from a distance. But if you look at them and you've done enough Graphghans, you can tell, like, it should be like a coloring book. If you've got a coloring book with a picture of Dorothy, the outside is cut, and you don't want any breaks in that outside. If you have, when you don't have them breaks, even when kids color and they stay within the lines, it's more crisp, it's cleaner. And that's what you need with a lot of these graphs that are done in non-cluster stitches, like the single crochet, the half double crochet, and the Tunisian simple stitch. Even in Tunisian knit stitch, it's cleaner. So, did I lose anybody? Do we have any questions? Is what I'm saying making sense this evening? Probably take a minute for everything to come through. But, yes, I will be doing a tutorial on how to read the different patterns, to change them from what you currently have into a Tunisian simple stitch pattern. I think it'll make a huge difference. And I can get an example or two made up, and it's going to show what one stitch looks like over doing 4 stitches of a pattern, like the corner to corner ones. Because like I said, that jagged line, the broken lines, they don't work out well. And once you do a few, you will notice. And I think a lot of us too have used several different graphers, and you will see the difference between the graphers too in the quality. If they have the broken lines, the way that their patterns are wrote out, if it comes with a graph. A lot of them will work with you if you want them written out by color blocks, or if you want them written out just black and white with, the standard single crochet, 3 gray, 5 black. And I think everybody has personal preferences about that too. My personal preference is I like to print out the graph, because that's where I like to spend the money on my ink, because it's easier to follow and I can see what's going on with it. If I print out the graph and the color blocks, it does eat a lot of ink. And in my experience, if you're doing like a portrait, that the colors are really close. It is extremely hard to tell the difference between the colors that you need to use and the color that the block is, unless the designer goes in and specifically says each gray box will substitute for the color caramel and each brown box will be brown, so that it's easier to tell them apart. So I hope that makes sense. But like I said, I will be doing some videos. We did run a poll in here recently that asked about what you guys would be interested in and what you were looking for in our group. And we'll be expanding on that to find out what everybody's looking for, what kind of tutorials you're looking for. We recently got, Erica went in and was gracious enough to take our tutorials that we do have and put closed captions on them, because we do have a few people in the group that are hearing impaired or deaf, and I know that's going to help them greatly. So, Kim, Robin, Pearl, any questions? Thank you for posting that link, Erica. Well, I guess since we don't have a lot of questions this evening, if there's any video tutorials you would like to see, I will be putting up a flyer for that, that you can go under that flyer in our albums and specifically ask for a certain video, and I will get it made as soon as I can. I know that that list will probably get long really quickly, but I have some equipment on the way in, and some new exciting things going on with the group, and I will be letting you all know about those shortly. But yeah, I think that the video tutorials was one of the biggest questions, the biggest that got the hits for the poll, and also the cows. So we will be running a poll too to see what kind of cows you guys would like to see. And in the meantime, I still get notifications on this video even when it's done. So please, if you have any questions, any comments, any afterthoughts, anything you'd like to see, post it under here, post it in the group, and I will answer it, get it made, get it taken care of, and you will see it in the group very soon. But I guess if there's no questions for the evening, we're going to cut it short. And thank you all for joining me. I hope you all have a fantastic evening. And if there's anything you need, always feel free to ask. That's what we're here for. We're here to teach and to make you a better crocheter. So, have a fantastic evening, everybody. Bye.